Hello. Normally I've been doing Genesis on Mondays, but I think it's Lent, and it might be nice to do a few verses from Psalm 51 for Lent. Now, we can't do all of Psalm 51 on just Mondays on Lent, because there are more verses than there are Mondays. I think there are, 6 Mondays in Lent? I don't remember exactly, but I thought we'd do some Psalms, and I want to do at least Genesis 127 before we leave Genesis. But I'm feeling that itch to move to the New Testament when we get to Passion Week. So we'll see what happens. We want to keep it interesting. I know some of you who watch this are particularly interested in Hebrew. So maybe we'll do 2 verses a week, one Greek and one Hebrew. We'll figure out something. But I want to do Psalm 51 verses on Monday. So let's go ahead and begin Psalm 51. Lam Nazaik, to the musician, Mizmor la David. For the musician, a psalm to David. Now, is it a psalm to David? According to David? Usually la David is understood as by David, a psalm of David. It is interesting that it's le David, to David. Is it a psalm in honor of David? Or is it a psalm according to David? Well, I want to go ahead and say something a little bit controversial, but I don't think that any of the headings of the psalm were original. Now we can debate, well, wait a minute, when it reached its canonical form, when Psalm 1 through 150 came to be grouped into 5 books as a collection, did it have the headings then? It may very well have had the headings when it reached its canonical form. However, I don't want to go into too much detail, but let me say that I view the canonical form of Scripture as important theologically. That is, the canonical form of Scripture is the form that is the base camp for our thoughts of truths about God. However, the canonical form is, I would distinguish it from the historical form. This is a little shanky theology. I'm not a professor anywhere right now, and I've not written on this. But in my opinion, the mistake that we have made in the 20th and 21st centuries is that we have mistaken the form of the text that is the playground for theology for the form of the text, and maybe form is not the right word, that is appropriate for history. We've confused history and theology. The canonical form of the text is the appropriate form for doing Christian theology. However, that is distinguishable and distinct from historical investigation into the text. And so, again, I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but so in its canonical form, it is natural that we would explore Psalm 51 as a psalm of David. Let me do the next line. Babo, when he came in, when Nathan came in to him, Nathan the prophet, according to him going to Bathsheba. So when coming to him, Nathan the prophet, according to as David went into Bathsheba. So Psalm 51 is traditionally read as a psalm by David confessing his sin in relation to Bathsheba. You might argue that that's the canonical form of Psalm 51. That's the shape that Psalm 51 has within the Bible. And I think it's perfectly appropriate, therefore, for us to explore the meaning that these words have against that context. It is a canonical context. There are truths, theological truths, to be had from that reading. However, I would argue that when we read Psalm 51 historically, which is different, when we want to know what Psalm 51 meant originally, then this heading was not probably part of that. And in fact, when you get later on into Psalm 51, let me look it up real quickly here. Psalm 51, verse 18 talks about building the walls of Jericho. So historically, if we bracket this heading and we look at verses 1 and we look especially at verse 18 inductively, when were the walls of Jerusalem not intact? Well, they were not intact before Nehemiah rebuilt them. They were intact in the days of David. And so I must say that from an inductive perspective, historically, Psalm 51 doesn't read like it would be a Psalm of David. It reads as something that would actually come from about 500 years later than David. Now, I hate history is a party pooper. This is what I've found with biblical studies. That real disciplined historical study of the Bible is a party pooper upon a bunch of nice traditions that we really enjoy preaching, and they make great preaching texts. And you get upset with Bible scholars. Why do you have to go ruining everything? Well, I've learned to have my cake and eat it too. Having my cake is reading the Bible in its canonical form as a theological text of theological truths. And in its final canonical form, Psalm 51 mostly reads as a psalm of David when Nathan confronted him for what he did with Bathsheba. And that's the tradition. Historically, sometimes it doesn't come out that way. I like traditions. I'm not anti-traditions, but I think it's pretty obvious that traditions make things grander than they were originally. Traditions, they tend to, there's usually some kernel that was true, but then things go kind of to the whole next level. They become very, very sensationalized, and they move from the less famous to the more famous. They make uncertainty more concrete. Again, I'll stop there. These are my conclusions. And so I take this preface here for the musician, a psalm for David or according to David, when Nathan came into him, Nathan the prophet, because he went into Bathsheba. That's a fine way to read the psalm if you want to read it. But historically, we should talk of the psalmist here rather than David, and think of it against the context of the time of returning from exile, or the exile period. Okay, don't have to agree with it. I could be wrong. I'm just saying biblical studies is a great party pooper. At least I've found it that way. There's a lot of other neat stuff there, though. Okay, well, I'm not going to do more analysis of this preface, but there you have it. You have 4 or 2, the musician, a psalm, a mizmor, la David, to David, or according to David, in the coming to him, Nathan, the prophet, according to that, as he went to Bathsheba, the daughter of 7. Is that what that says there? Anyway, her name's Bathsheba. Okay, now to the verse. Here's the first verse. In my numbering, in your numbering, this is the first verse of the psalm. That was a preface. Okay. Kaneni Elohim, Kakasadeka, Karov, Rakameka, Makeh, F, Sha, Ah. Okay. I'm supposed to do that last. I'm practicing. Okay, so what does this mean? Have mercy, God, according to your chesed, according to your loving kindness. So this is the first stanza. Karov, not Karov, according to the abundance of your compassion, blot out my transgression. By the way, well, let's go on and look at it in slower motion now. So, Kaneni, have mercy, be gracious to me, Elohim, God, according to your chesed, according to your loving kindness, according to your faithfulness, your steadfast love. There's chesed hiding in the middle there, covenant faithfulness. That's the first stanza of this verse, and then we have the second, according to the abundance of, all from this, according to abundance of your racham, your mercy, blot out my transgression. Okay, so the key to Hebrew poetry is parallelism. You say it, and then you say it again. So create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Or in this case, be gracious to me, God, according to your chesed. According to the abundance of your mercy, blot out my transgression. So this is synonymous parallelism. Say it again. Be gracious to me according to your hesed. Let me put it another way. According to the abundance of your mercy, blot out my transgression. So both of these lines are meant to be roughly synonymous. Okay, they say roughly the same thing, not exactly, but they are in the ballpark. They say similar things. We call that synonymous parallelism. Let's look at the grammar, shall we? Be gracious to me. So the Hirik Yod here at the end is the me. You might notice, so there's be gracious to me, Hirik Yod. And I think there was another one, wasn't there? Yes, at the end, my transgression. See the Yod? It's a Kamatz Yod at the end here. But both of them have the same idea. This is an objective pronoun, be gracious to me. I'm the object of graciousness. And then this is a possessive pronoun, my transgression. But they both, the Yod at the end in both cases has a me factor to it. Okay, so be gracious to me. Now it's a command, right? The ni at the end here, that is an unnecessary nun. I think it's called a nun energicum or something. It's just an extra nun for no reason except sound, I suppose. The word here is kanan, kate nun nun, and this is a doubled nun here for its two nuns. So it's an imperative. It has a first common singular suffix, me. That's what I mean by first common singular suffix, me. And then kanan, there's the letters there. It's an imperative. It's not a particular stem. It's the base stem, the Grundstamm, the Kal stem, but it's a command. Be gracious. Now, again, we're not commanding God. It's grammatical. It's not moral. You can't command God. What are you talking about? It's a request. Please, I mean, we can say that if you want. Please be gracious to me. But we understand. It's be gracious to me. You can say it's grammatically an imperative, but don't get upset. Okay, so be gracious to me, Elohim, kind of evocative here, addressing God, according to your hesed, kesed. And I've broken it down into its component parts. So here's the preposition ka, according to. There's the pronominal suffix your, possessive suffix, and there's kesed in the middle, your loving kindness. And then for the second line, according to the abundance of, so there again, okay. So this is again ka, according to. See the parallelism? Be gracious to me, O God, according to your kesed, according to the abundance of. So we have a parallelism here, even though the order is different. In fact, is it a chiasm? Not exactly. Okay, so according to abundance of, I'm going to take this as construct and put an of after it. According to abundance of there's your again, your loving kindness, your mercy or compassion. So again, this is a possessive suffix that's second masculine singular, your. This is an imperative. Blot out my transgression. So this is a call or G imperative, nothing particularly done to it. Just like this second masculine singular from makah. So this is an imperative. The vocal schwa under the first consonant is a hint that it's an imperative. Okay, a little bit of grammar. So let's see if we can pronounce it. I had a hard time pronouncing it before. We'll try it again. Kaneni, be gracious, Elohim, O God. Be gracious to me, O God. Ka kas deka. Ka ka de get ha. Ka kas deka. Ka kas deka. Ka kas deka. The accent, I think, is on the second last syllable here. According to your hesed. Karov, according to the abundance of. Rakameka, your compassion. Makeh, blot out. Fasha'ah, my transgression. Boy, sorry, it's too late at night. Kaneni, Elohim. Kakasdeka, karov, rakameka, meka, meke, fusha'a. Anyway, you'll do better than me. Go ahead and try it. All right. This has been Psalm 51:1 as we begin Lent in Hebrew.